Happy Tuesday and welcome to the Wolff Den, presented by Win Again Academy. Mark Moyer doing some great things with his networking event. There's another one tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern, the intersection of finance and sports. Again, winagainacademy.com. Check out their events, and happy to be here in the Wolff Den another week. We welcome Dave Newton to the Wolff Den. Dave, welcome, and happy to have you.
Matt. Be kind on me.
So you are the first international guest on the Wolff Den.
Really? Wow.
I think
how did that happen?
I believe that's the case. We'll have to go back. We might have had Canadian. We might have someone Canadian, but we don't.
Yeah.
That's in the U.S. That's not. Those are our friendly neighbors to the north. So they're going to have a little bit of a different perspective, obviously from you, and we'll get into a lot of stuff about ticketing and events and music. But the first question I have for you is, how much on the pulse of the U.S. entertainment industry are you? Do you have a lot of knowledge or a lot of interaction, or are you mostly in the U.K.?
You know what? I've tended to find that, particularly on the live event side of the business, the U.S. or North America and Europe are quite separated. Much more so than on the recorded side of the business. I kind of felt when I was sort of working with bands, managing bands and that side of things, and licensing records for my record label and stuff like that there wasn't this sort of difference. But I think it might have kind of come out of the fact that a lot of UK bands will be represented in around the world outside of North America by a UK-based booking agent, and then they'll have a US-based North America agent. US bands will be represented usually for the world outside Europe by their US agent, and then in Europe by their UK agent. That's kind of very generalized. It's evolved a bit over the last 30 years, but I think it does mean that if you're a UK band or an agent manager, then you kind of you get involved in North America when you need to. So when the tour's being planned and when you're out there and when things are happening, and then when it's done, you kind of close that door, and you're kind of back in your domestic kind of live ecosystem. Most of my kind of awareness of what's happening stateside comes through just reading, just sort of news stories and picking up on stuff that's in Polestar or Billboard, or even the kind of live conference events and stuff. Intics. Okay, you do have internationals there, but it's very US dominated. And then the kind of ticketing conferences that are in Europe, it's pretty much just European and maybe some Southeast Asian participants. So yeah, it does seem to be like two worlds that kind of revolve around each other sometimes, Yeah,
I mean, they're mixed. There seems to be a lot of separation and differences between what's going on in the U.S. and outside the U.S. Have you been to an Index conference in the U.S.?
No, I haven't. No. See, again, that kind of, I've been doing ticketing, been involved in ticketing 21 years, but never, I think if the opportunity came, if I was working on something that required me to be there, it would be fascinating. But it's never been an essential from my point of view, not yet.
Completely understand. Well, we forgot to introduce you. So tell everyone who you are and where you are, and then
okay,
what you do. And then
I am in lovely sunny Oxford today.
Oh, nice.
Which is where I've lived for 38 years. Yeah. Didn't grow up here, but I've lived here pretty much all my adult life. Currently I'm working on a number of different sort of ticketing projects on a kind of consultancy advisor basis. And that really came out of my me having launched We Got Tickets back in, well, it's almost exactly 21 years ago this month, in 2000. The idea of starting a digital ticket company was obviously a little bit of a strange thing back then. And I've been surprised how long it's taken really for the industry to shift towards digital ticketing. But yeah, so started that. I moved out of that 3 years ago. But prior to that, I've done a whole bunch of things. Like I was mentioning earlier, I've had a couple of record labels in my time. I started off by writing a music magazine, and promoted shows, managed bands, even had a couple of publishing companies along the way. So I seem to get bored very easily.
We all get bored easily. So music is your thing.
Okay, well, I guess having grown up in the UK in the sort of late 70s, my stuff was all the kind of stuff that followed the first wave of punk, really. So bands like The Jam, Blondie, Ramones, The Undertones was the first gig I went to see. And so a lot of kind of that stuff had a big impact on me. But also, I guess it was a bit of a golden age for disco as well at the same time. So I kind of got into all these soul, disco, funk records, like Funkadelic, Parliament, Al Green. So there's this real sort of kind of almost a split personality in my record buying at that point in time. So that's kind of what I grew up with, and probably kind of influenced most of the gigs and most of the bands I went to see, through the late 70s through the 80s. Although my sort of knowledge of music has broadened, I guess, the stuff that kind of makes me want to leap around the room is still kind of anchored in that period.
What made you want to get into the music world with regards to working? I mean, I think it's, look, I didn't really start getting big into music until I got to college. High school, I started to listen to the radio a little bit more, but college is when I really started to get into the scene. Obviously, I love entertainment, so I would, sports and entertainment. That's what I was hoping to get into for work wise. But was there anything that drew you to that? Were your parents music people to
no.
get into music? How did you get into it?
Not at all. And I tried to play some. I tried to kind of learn instruments, and I was never any good. In fact, I think I'm quite glad that I realized probably at the age of 12 that I had no musical ability, because I've met a lot of people who are in this business on the non-musician side of the table who are just frustrated musicians, and it shows sometimes, especially journalists. I found they could be quite bitter, so yeah, I guess I just consumed. I mean, the first day that I kind of went out and spent my own money and bought records, I was 12, and I went out and bought 9 singles. I just kind of went out, and I didn't really know what I was doing. In fact, I went into the record shop, which are quite intimidating places, as we know, and I ordered the singles by number, by their position in the chart, because I really didn't know how you did it. So I just sort of walked in and I said, "Can I have number 1, number 3?" And actually it made sense, because I worked in a record shop later, and you used to keep the top 75 singles in those positions behind the counter. So actually it was, it was easier to buy the hits that way than it was by kind of requesting them by name. So
like ordering a sandwich.
Yeah, maybe it was. Yeah,
like
Chinese takeaway or something. Yeah. So yeah, I guess, I think it was a great era for singles as well. So it was kind of coming off the back of that very sort of serious rock period of the 70s, which obviously passed me by. In the early 70s, when I was, kind of primary school age, sort of 8, 9, 10, I just listened to T-Rex and Slade and Sweet, any stuff that kind of looked interesting and, made you want to sort of sing along at the top of your voice, and that music was, maybe didn't have a load of depth to it. I mean, in some places, but it was very visual. It was very entertaining. So I kind of miss the Pink Floyd, Genesis, Led Zeppelin, the serious stuff, and when I got into buying records for myself, the singles were king, so I mean, the 6 Buzzcocks singles that were released in 1978 are an untouchable set of records. They're just like so. And I never really thought to buy albums. That came later. I worked out that actually if I like 3 singles off an album, I might as well buy the album because it was financially cheaper.
Yeah, it's actually a funny conversation because you guys had Columbia House where you'd like buy one CD and they'd send you 7 of them. Like buy one CD for $6 and then you get the 7 for a penny each. So I accumulated a lot of CDs that way.
Right.
Okay. In college, and I first started getting into it, I was buying albums for one song. So I was spending $10 to $12 for an album that I really only wanted to listen to one song in, and most of them, that was it. Maybe I would like a second song, but so I had ton of these albums, spent a ton of money. I would have saved a lot of money now as opposed to back when I started.
Annoying, but mind you, I think also, things just cost more then because, as a comparison, when I first started buying 7-inch singles, and I've got a lot, there. So you can see them all on the shelf. They were 79 pence each, which was a fair bit of your pocket money, just less than £1. And yet when iTunes launched, and it's gone up now, but in the late 2000s, you'd pay 79p for a download, which shows you how kind of like it moved on. In 30 years, the price for buying that one track was still the same. Obviously the cost of production was different, but to buy a piece of music and own a piece of music so you could play it whenever you wanted, that cost you 79p. In your case, it cost you $12-15, because you were buying the whole CD album,
Yeah.
But
it's funny. I should go back and listen to some of the artists and try and see if I like some of the songs, but for the most part, I don't. There's very few albums that I go back and I'm like, I like almost all of these songs. And a lot of just liking this one song. So for me, it's easy to just put on my Amazon Music and go from one song to another. I mean, there's a handful. Like there's a Tom Petty album, Full Moon Fever, the Weezer Blue album. I don't listen to anything Billy Joel, but there's not a lot out there, that I can listen. Do you have a few albums that you listen to front to back?
Oh yeah, no, quite a lot actually. And I think part of the problem with is that albums got longer as well. CDs allowed you to put more songs on the album. So when you had a piece of vinyl, I mean, I know we still have vinyl, but when vinyl was the defining format, you basically had 40 minutes. So the first six Ramones albums you can fit onto 3 C90 cassettes. 3 C60 cassettes. Sorry, one album on each side of a C60. And so you're like, there's no space for filler. Then you've got to deliver over that period of time. And I think what it's interesting if you kind of plot how popular music has actually been influenced by the format that it's delivered on now. So now we're on streaming services. You've got to hit that chorus. There aren't intros anymore. You don't have a track that takes 30 seconds before the vocals come in. Tracks are shorter now. They got longer, now they got shorter. You had 12-inch singles, so you have Meatloaf knocking out 9.5 minutes of Bat Out of Hell because he could. But to get that across on a streaming platform now, whoa, skip. Don't bore us, get to the chorus. So I think it's interesting how the creation of music it has always been influenced by the format that it's delivered on. On the album thing, I came up. Here's something to challenge people with. I came up with a definition of a great band. I was because obviously this last year spent most of my time in this room listening to the music that I've got. So been going through all my records and stuff like that, and I was thinking that one way to define a great band, and it's not the only definition, is if they've made 3 consecutively great albums. So they hit a great album and then keep it going for 2 more. And there are a lot of bands who've made great records. There's a lot of bands who've made more than 1 great record, but 3 on the trot is a little bit of is a tough one. And very few bands have done it with their first 3 records. So this came to me when I was listening to New Order. I was listening to Low Life, Brotherhood, and Technique, and I thought, wow, they nailed it. 3 albums over 5 years or something. So.
It's part of going back to the delay or at the beginning is like it was also a music video kind of thing, like give you 30 seconds to a minute to kind of set the scene here on the video, and there's some talking and Naughty by Nature does that a lot in their songs. There's like talking, and I love Naughty by Nature, but I hate having to wait 30, 40 seconds to get into the I think there's a really funny Run DMC track with Beavis and Butthead called Bounce, and it's like a minute and a half, and it's really funny stuff. So I listened to it, but it's like it's that's a long time to get to the song, a minute and a half. Do you follow the Hall of Fame? And you talked about great bands. Do you follow the Hall of Fame at all? The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
You're kind of aware of it, but I've always been somewhat adverse to kind of awards and accolades. I find it all that kind of backslapping side of things is mutual backslapping. It's all a little bit I can kind of see why, but to me, a lot of the music I like is sort of kind of anti-institutional rather than pro. So I
do like a lot of pop, so I listen to a lot of stuff that's in the video. But if I turned on the award shows, I'd be like, I feel like this song was 2 years ago.
Yeah, well,
they're still celebrating it. Let's listen to some new stuff. But it's all geared towards rap, hip hop, and pop, and then country's big. I'm a big country music fan. Is there a lot of country music out there in the UK, or?
It happens, but I generally steer up. I guess it doesn't have the resonance here. It doesn't. It's a sort of.
It's a culture too. Here.
It's a culture, I'm talking about first 3 Public Enemy albums. They're one of the bands that did nail it on their first 3. I think in terms of great records. So
I think they just put out their new record they put out this year was very good. There's a Beastie Boys track on there. The remix of Fight the Power I thought was pretty good.
Yeah.
I do like. It's funny though because Flavor Flav is such a character. Like some people are like, who is this guy? And he's on the reality shows, but he's good. Him and Chuck D, great. I mean, I think they are in the Hall of Fame. I asked that question because someone was saying like, who would you be surprised to hear was not in the Hall of Fame? And there's some pretty heavy hitters out there. My personal and I've seen him multiple times is someone like Weird Al Yankovic, who I think has given so much to the music industry. I'm shocked that he's not in there.
He's probably upset a few people along the way, though, hasn't he?
Yeah, he probably has. But I think first of all, he's very talented, and he's a great performer. His shows are a great mix of him singing and then like real video. He's a pop culture icon. So he's mentioned he just can show video clips of him being mentioned in, Family Guy and The Simpsons and, all these other programs, and so it's great. I love, I think that's the kind of entertainment combined with music that I like. There's a lot of entertainment like dancing and stuff that I'm not that fond of, and it sounds like you might not be either, based on the yeah. So you could leave it,
I could appreciate a good choreographed routine, but it doesn't get me out of bed in the morning.
No, I agreed. But musicals are making a little bit of a comeback with the Hamilton and the success of that. That's another thing that I like, because I like, movie type TV, and then I like music. So I find myself listening to some songs from musicals that I've never even seen, just because I like the music. So it's interesting how they can combine that. And you could be, it used to be musicals were, I guess they were very focused on a certain customer. And now I think they're expanding a little bit. And some of that's with the success of Hamilton. Hey, even what was the South Park one?
Oh yeah. You mean the one about the Jerry Springer one?
Book of Mormon.
Book of Mormon. Yeah.
I mean, I love that show. I thought it was hilarious. So I think seeing an adaptation of certain things in the theater is good for me. Is theater big out in the UK?
Yeah. I mean, the West End is Broadway, basically. It's the counterpart to what goes on Broadway. Is stuff may start on the West End and then move out your side of the pond, or vice versa. So obviously with all the, for years it was kind of Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice. They were they ruled the musicals. With Evita, Cats, Starlight Express. Jesus Christ Superstar, Joseph, and Amazing just I guess for about 40 years they've kind of ruled that side of things. But I've never been. I find them, I don't find that they're either theatre or they're either music. But I also think what's happened is that people have much broader range of entertainment that they enjoy now. It kind of used to be, if you went to live music, you were a kind of particular sort of person, and it was quite niche, and you wouldn't get people going to sport and going to music. They'd either go and watch soccer, they'd go and watch their team week in, week out, have the fight, have the drink, have the chips, and then that was it. And or it was a different kind of person that went to music. And I think music had its tribes. You were kind of into ska and two-tone, or you were into punk, or you were into new wave, or you were into. And I think people just have a buffet now, and it means everything is open to everyone. But I don't know whether anything feels special to people, or it feels like they own it. So
that's an interesting point. I think it's been like that even over here, and I'm in the middle. But like, if you have the circle of music and the circle of sports, I think what's happened is each of these circles has expanded so big that now there's that cross section of it. So there's a bigger cross section, but there still are people who are sports and not music, and are music and not sports. And it's funny for someone like me, I'm a huge fan of both of them. Like, they both are, outside of my family, they're the most important things for me. And that's why I'm sort of in the line of work that I'm in. But it's funny to hear someone just say, "Oh no, I don't watch sports," or
I know,
I don't know music. But the funny thing was, until I got to college, I couldn't tell you the difference between Led Zeppelin and all of the big bands out there.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I didn't know who was who, and so I started really at the '80s.
How old are you, Matt?
I'll be 45 in May. So I really didn't start listening till about the '90s, but the '80s are some of my favorite music. Having gone to like '80s night in college, and like every weekend we would go to '80s night, and just I love the '80s music. I love all music, really. There's very little I don't. My range is like, Britney Spears and Miley Cyrus to country to rap. Not huge on the hardcore metal or the hardcore rap. But I understand, and I think there's a lot of. It's funny, like the music snobs. I'm not necessarily a music snob, but I can tell, like, when the people are like, "Oh, this stuff is garbage," or "This stuff is And today, I think there's still a lot of good music out there, but it's a different world now with regards to making it big. And we just had a friend of mine, JD Iker, on, who's an indie singer songwriter, and it's just, if you have money or the right person, which is good for a lot of things, you can get pay to get your song the plays.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in sport, I think a lot of it goes in, look, if you're good enough, someone's going to find you. But there's so many good, musicians out there that just don't get, I think, the praise and recognition that they deserve, like the starving artists. So it's hard. It's hard out there. There's a ton of them. People are beautiful.
It's always been hard because there's always been more people who want to do it than there is space. There's only ever been 40 spots in the top 40.
Billboard's up to 200 now,
but there's still only 200. It's still like there are going to be people that are less talented who make it. But it's not just about talent, it's about connecting. It's about the moment, and
stage presence too. You got people on these game shows, the show games, reality shows that are.
Well, yeah. There are lots of reasons why things connect. I started a record label in '97 called Shifty Disco, and we started it as a singles club. So you signed up for a year and you got 12 singles from us, and we did it as CD singles because I was very keen back then not to be vinyl retro. We were moving past vinyl, and I realized that if we were going to get people to buy, then they had to be able to play it. A lot of people in the late 90s were buying records and they had nothing to, they couldn't play them. They were just
making a comeback. The vinyls are making a comeback now.
But at least so are record players though. Back then there was vinyl but no record players, but anyway. So we kind of started it, me and a couple of friends, on a bit of a whim, and we had this theory that every good band has one great song in them. So don't worry about a career, don't worry about making albums necessarily. If they're good, then that'll happen. But actually, let's find that one song that should be released. So we put out 2 tracks. I'll show you. So. It was generic sleeves, okay?
Yeah.
So each year the color changed, but that was it. And so the band had this much space to work with in terms of artwork, and they were all numbered. So if you were subscriber 100, you got number 100 of every release. So we did it as a club. Half of them went out to subscribers, the other half went out to shops, and we ended up releasing a lot of great tracks, but that were complete one-offs. The band had, one great song in their set. So let's record it. Let's put it out. And I think that maybe sometimes we're a bit precious, and I can understand it from an artist's point of view. They want to be a band. They want to be successful, but if they've got one good song, let's just get that one song out there.
To eat. For the rest of your life.
Yeah, be a one-hit wonder. It's a good club, At least you have one hit.
So. We've talked about putting together a one-hit wonder festival on a live stream, which I'm see if I can make it. I reached out to some people and I got some interesting replies like, "Hey, we're no longer a band." I'm like, "Yeah, I get it, but you can come back and play 5 minutes and make a few bucks, and people love it. I get that people have moved on, but anyway. No, I think one song, that's it. Same in pro sports. You get one good year, you get paid, and you might never have to do good again. That's not the obviously not the plan.
The club of 2-hit wonders is really rare, though. That's a really good club. I think that could be a good festival. So you've got a band like Electric Six, who had a hit with Fire in the Disco. What was it? Is it called High Voltage? And then Gay Bar. So they had 2 big hits, and that was it. They still tour now, they still do stuff, but they had 2 records that they both were number 2 singles over here in the UK. Or a band like Wheatus, who had Teenage Dirtbag and then the Erasure cover, Little Respect. Yeah, it's like having a one-hit wonder. Yeah, the pop history's littered with them, but 2-hit wonders now. I
have Teenage Dirtbag on my downloaded, but they marked it as Weezer. So for the longest time, I thought that was Weezer's song. Like, it's a great song. I love that song. We're here with Dave Newton. This is the Wolff Den, talking music. We're going to get into some tickets. Dave is out in the UK, so we're going to get a little bit of perspective on the UK. Just to plug Win Again Academy again, they are a proud partner of the Wolff Den. They have an event tonight, intersection of finance and sports. Go to winagainacademy.com for more information. Mark Moyer doing some great stuff with guests and networking. Let's talk about networking, because that's how you and I met. I just, I have so much going on. I clicked a button and I was like, I had it, the time difference wrong. I don't know what it was, but I joined your little group at the tail end, and I think you guys were probably supposed to have already been gone. Is that right?
Well, it's all very informal. So there's a guy I was chatting to, Joaquim in Paris, who used to work for C Tickets over there, and he got in contact and we had a chat, and he'd read an article that I'd written for IQ magazine about collaboration in ticketing, because it's been one of my bugbears for many years, is that there is just no collaboration. There's no standard format to ticket. There's no attempt to make the world better for the customer. It's all very inward focused, and it's all about acquiring inventory rather than doing right by the customer. And I think that the ticket industry and the live entertainment industry, in a broader sense, has really failed the customer. The fact that secondary ticketing exists, the fact that people can get exploited, the fact that we're still dealing with transferable formats of tickets. The ticketing industry is embarrassingly backward, there's no sharing of information, there's no sharing of insights or whatever. That as much as I wish it wasn't as successful as it is, the car industry is successful because all the car manufacturers share their information. They know the market, they know how to keep producing and selling cars and marketing them. Whereas we seem as a live event industry to consider anyone that's doing the same thing as us as a threat, as competition, instead of making the whole thing better, making the pie bigger, and there being a slice for everyone. It's more about sort of taking my slice of the pie away, so it doesn't even look like a pie anymore. I don't know where I'm going with that analogy. Anyway, I'll stop there.
I agree. It is bad over there as it is here, would say, the way Ticketmaster is viewed by some people.
Yeah, but anyone that's got a dominant position in the market is not good for the market, ultimately, and invariably is not good for the customer, because the customer isn't the priority, that this whole industry, the whole live events industry, is about two entities. It's about the artist and it's about the customer. Everyone else, all of us we're just in the middle. We're just facilitators,
Too many of us, right? There's too many people involved. I get that when I'm trying to talk. Like, I can try and do one thing and there's like 6 people. I don't know who to talk to.
Yeah. And there are too many stakeholders, and the stakeholders just, it's a chain, so it's artist, manager, agent, promoter, venue, ticket companies, then the customer. So the only one who actually kind of really deals directly with the customer is a ticket company, and the ticket company is really far removed from the artist. So it's hard. When a fan goes to a show, there are only two. They have two relationships. There's only two things that are important to them. It's the artist and the venue. They don't care who the promoter is, who the agent is, who the ticket company is, who the manager is. They don't go, oh, I'll go and see that band because they're managed by so and so. They'll go, oh yeah, no, Ed Sheeran at Shepherd's Bush Empire. I love that venue. I've heard a couple of his tracks. Yeah, that's where I'm going to go. So
that brings up a good point about the Pearl Jam Ticketmaster TIFF. Are you familiar with it?
Oh yeah. No, I've read the book Ticketmasters. Yeah. So
Pearl Jam, for the people who don't know, Eddie Vedder really railed against Ticketmaster and took them to court and sued them. I think they lost. But now they're represented by Ticketmaster.
Yeah.
So we went from suing them to now that's their ticket platform. And really, my opinion was, look, Ticketmaster does a lot of good things, right? They bring a lot of entertainment to a lot of people, and there's a lot of good that Ticketmaster does. But my feeling is that Eddie Vedder and Pearl Jam can go anywhere. There's enough non-Ticketmaster venues that they can do a world tour, and they'll be signed. And so I just, it'd be interesting to have that conversation. I've talked to people at Pearl Jam before, but it'd be interesting to have that conversation. Like, why aren't people trying, the bigger people? I know Kid Rock kind of started it where he just wanted all tickets to be $20, no fees, and he did a $20, I just don't understand why people wouldn't want to get more control of their destiny, the bigger players.
Because they haven't got collective power. If Pearl Jam were doing that, then 100 other artists should have piled in and done the same thing, but they didn't. They let Pearl Jam take all the flack and deal with all the shit, because they were like, oh, I don't want to ruin out my career. I might not get past the next album. The artists are in the most powerful but also perilous situation in this industry. So managers invariably outlast artists, agents outlast them, promoters outlast them. The record industry, the way deals have been structured, not so much now, was all about advances, and therefore the manager was geared to getting as good a deal up front as possible, because that's where they made their money. If that artist never recouped, well, that's all right. They move on to the next one, and so I think it's really difficult to expect an artist to make a stand. And we've seen this in the secondary ticketing as well, because there are too many that also make some money out of it, indirectly or directly. So they're either working with promoters who are putting tickets out directly through the secondary market, and that's what kind of funds the tour. That's what makes it possible. There are too many people. There is no united collaborative front. So coming back to the first time we met was, so I was, Joachim and I just said, well, let's just invite a whole bunch of people for a drink, So end of the day, 5 o'clock UK, 6 o'clock European time, Central Time, and we'll just make it an open invitation. So anyone just invite them. If they want to invite anyone else, whatever. And the only kind of rules are that no selling. So we're not there to promote ourselves or our business or whatever, and talk openly. If you can't talk openly on the subject, don't be there. So it's and we've been doing it monthly. It's been a nice thing, nice lockdown.
Yeah, it was fun. I joined it, but it's just funny about timing it, because that's the middle of the day for me. And if I'm a half hour later, I don't meet you and the other guys, and so who knows? Who knows what'll happen? But you're not probably sitting here, and who knows? I don't know what's going to come from the relationship. It's certainly good to have.
Yeah, we tried to pick a time, because one person from New Zealand joined us as well, and it was, I think, 6 o'clock in the morning there. So
it makes perfect sense, the time. It's hard for me to try and figure out timing. We've done some events. We did them one at 7, and it's dinner time for the US, and then we do it at 1, and or 11. It's too early for the West Coast, and you do it at 2. It's in the middle of the day, and the great thing about this is, this will be on replay. So if you didn't catch it live, you can watch it at any point you want. And eventually I'm going to have someone, or the point where I can say, hey, at minute 37, Dave and I talk about Pearl Jam. At minute 6, we talk about singles.
An index.
Kind of like the hashtags, or so, like keywords that you can that you can go back to. So anyway, that's a good networking. What kind of networking stuff do you do outside of that?
A few things. I mean, I've always been loath to call it networking because it sounds like a deliberate act.
Yeah.
So I guess
Socializing? I don't know. Socializing? What do you want to call it?
yeah, life's networking, isn't it? You're always you kind of come across people and you either click or you don't click, and if you don't click, you probably don't. It doesn't matter. So there are a few. There are a few kind of regular industry events that I've attended, over the years, and that's always an opportunity to meet new people. What I've been trying to do this last year is call people up regularly, so not message them or whatever, just actually pick up the phone and just and either they answer and they chat, either they answer and they can't chat because they're in the middle of something, or you leave a message and they call you back or they don't call you back.
But we had an interesting chat before we went live here. Do you leave voicemails?
I don't have any voicemails on my phone. No,
I know you don't, but do you leave them for other people?
Yeah. I
If
do.
you have it, you'll use it, but you're not. There's no obligation to have it.
I mean, I figure that these days, if you've had a missed call, so unless you've got a specific message, then I might not leave a message. If I was, and with text messages and WhatsApp and stuff like that, the communication channels are multifaceted. And it's a bit like a pot of spaghetti sometimes. How I got a new phone last week, and today it rang, and it was the regular phone ringing, so not a WhatsApp call or whatever. And I didn't recognize the noise. I realized I hadn't had a call on it for a week. A regular call.
That's
so what's that sound? So yeah, it's.
What's the best piece of technology that we've discovered since the pandemic?
Oh, since pandemic.
Or maybe even the last few years, if you can't think of something.
Yeah. Wow, that's a good question. Oh dear, yeah. Probably my small spirit level, getting a small spirit level, because I've done a lot of decorating this year. So I've been doing a lot of work on the house. I've been trying to keep weekends separate from weekdays, so that I don't turn the computer on at weekends. I'm not in this room as much. So I thought the way to make things different would be to have a few projects around the house. I'm sure a lot of people have, but there are a lot of places you can't get to with a full spirit level. So getting a small spirit level, that's been my my highlight. It's not very high tech, but it is technology.
No, yeah. What you've been doing a lot of things. Obviously, you say you're consulting now. Tell me what has been your most successful venture and what has been your most enjoyable venture.
Oh, okay. All right. Probably successful was probably building We Got Tickets up from an idea over a bottle of wine through to, I think
you sold it or you bought out your part?
No, it just sort of fizzled out, really. It kind of got to a point where probably 10 years ago it hit a peak, but I think we didn't push on as a company. We needed to have really gone up a level, and
too soon. You hit the market too soon.
I think we created the market. Well, because the reason we started it was a label night for Shifty Disco, a pub in North London, and we had a band that people wanted to come and see. And it was £5 on the door, but people were traveling from outside of London and they wanted to be sure to get in. So we thought, well, we've got an online shop. Like I said, we were already selling MP3s and stuff and merchandise, CDs, T-shirts, records. In fact, Oxford Music Net was the shop. So that's still my email address. And we just said, well, why don't we sell tickets for the show? And we're like, yeah, okay, let's do that. And then we're like, but we don't really need to post them out, do we? We can just email people confirmation. The budget airlines were already doing it. You never got a ticket to fly on EasyJet. You just got an email confirmation with a code in it. So and we thought, well, we're we're selling the ticket, we're flying the plane, we're doing the check-in. It's our show, we can make this happen. And I was amazed. It's a 200 capacity venue, and we sold 87 tickets. From a standing start, we had these people that were willing to buy tickets online. So, and what happened was there were a lot of gigs going on at that level around the country, and there was no, there were maybe a few of them had tickets in record shops. That was about the only distribution of tickets, and that would only be for certain shows. What we did was we allowed event organizers the opportunity to ticket all their shows, because our booking fee was 10%, minimum 50 pence, 10% booking fee. And the way I kind of describe it is, if you consider ticketing as a pyramid with, Bon Jovi at Wembley Stadium at the top, or, then we were that really wide, thin base at the bottom where the ticket price was low, but there was a lot of events going on. Yeah, and it was word of mouth, most of the marketing, and we had the market to ourselves. Nobody else was doing anything at that level. What then happened was, other players came into the market at the same level. The bigger companies started to look down and cherry pick the stuff that developed with us. One classic example is we did, I don't know if you know of it, but Secret Cinema for years have done these huge productions. We were talking about musicals earlier. What they do is they take a film and they find a location and they create a whole production around screening of the film. So like they did Blade Runner in a disused shopping center, and had loads of actors, and they make it into a whole evening's worth of entertainment based around the film. And, we grew with them. They were a big client to us. And then, to the point where they were doing 15% of our turnover was that one client, but that just means that they're attractive to other ticket companies at that stage. We're doing 150,000 tickets a year with them. Well, that's very appealing to see tickets. And, so we just found that because we didn't grow ourselves, we didn't move on to a point. We should have taken investment. We should have grown to a level that was bigger than where we were, so that we could then fill that gap. What we did was we filled a gap that was nobody else was in. But once we did that, then our market was attractive to others, and we weren't able to acquire any other market. So it kind of built up, and I guess it was quite exciting. Sort of watching that, being part of, or being on that ride, really, as it grew up. But I also feel like it's not being able to make, not taking it any bigger has also been the disappointment. So
makes sense.
It's kind of double-edged, really.
So that was your most successful. How about the one you enjoyed, that gave you the most enjoyment?
Most enjoyment, yeah. Okay. I suppose probably going back to promoting. Back then, so this was sort of 87, 88, 89, 90. There was nothing really going on in Oxford. There was a few. It's not very far from London. Also, Reading is only half an hour away, and that's 3 times the size of Oxford. So, kind of gig-wise, I was traveling to shows, and that's where you got to see bands and things. And there was a few people who started to put on the occasional gig here, but it was very. There was no kind of series of shows, it was all a bit random. I got to see Primal Scream in '86, which was, that was a bit out the blue. Where did that come from? Somebody put that show on. The Go-Betweens from Australia came, but and that's partly why I started the music magazine. That I was trying to kind of create a bit of glue between what was going on, both for the local bands, but also the stuff that was coming through. I didn't want people to miss anything. I didn't want gigs to be happening and them not be sold out, because if that gig was successful, then there'd be more. it was good. I actually, in that period of time, here's a claim to fame. I wrote the first, not that I was aware, but I wrote the first review of what became Radiohead. So they were a band called On a Friday, local band, and they sent me a demo tape that I reviewed in '87, I think it was. So there was stuff going on locally, but it didn't really gel. One of the first bands I worked with, a band called Ride, who were then reviewed in the NME. The review started with Rider from Oxford, not a spectacular start. It was like a handicap to be a band from Oxford.
Yeah.
So I guess when I got to, I started promoting basically as a way of funding the magazine. The magazine wasn't really, it was just about washing its face. So I started a Friday night club. And my concept was to bring in a touring band and put a local band on. So the magazine was called Local Support. So the idea was that every gig had a local support band as a way of giving the local bands a bit of a step up. But also, I figured if they were playing with a touring band, a national band, then they'd work really hard at promoting the show. They might do 2 or 3 other gigs that month, but that was the one that had to be, sold out. That was the one where they had to prove their worth to themselves. And so that year, I basically got to cherry pick all the bands I wanted to see and have them play in my club, So
that's pretty great. How do you feel about these biopic movies? I think they're great, like Rocket Man, and Rhapsody, Blinded by the Light, Yesterday. Do you have a favorite of those?
The one I've watched most recently, and no, it wasn't a biopic. It's more a biography.
Like Yesterday and Blinded by the Light aren't really biopics. But
no.
They're centered around the band.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed Yesterday. Actually, I did. But it's easy viewing, isn't it? It's.
What band would you pick? I mean, you can't pick the Beatles. Who would you pick
to do a biopic of?
No, if you were Yesterday, and that was you, and you could be the one.
I think it would be The Fall, just because it would be really confusing to people. I think if if the Falls music could be the music that saved the world, then the world would be worth saving. So
I was listening to the Monkees. I'm a big Monkees fan. I have them on my playlist this morning. Why weren't they bigger?
Well, they had great songwriters, didn't they? I mean, what a team! John Stewart, Neil Diamond. They got the pick of the best writers at that point to put all that together. I watched the Polystyrene from X-Ray Specs. There was a biography on Sky this weekend, and that was really, really good. I mean, sad in some ways, but a kind of fascinating. The way they delivered it was really good. They didn't have any of all these. These documentaries, they have a lot of people on, a lot of people with their opinions and stuff like that, and a lot of talking heads basically. And they had all those people, but they didn't have them on camera. So the film was actually made by her daughter, and they'd had a sort of difficult relationship over the years. So it felt like a very personal story, and Polystyrene died in the early 2000s, so it was kind of like a reevaluation of their relationship, as well as that point, the late 70s, early 80s in music and women in music. And, she was mixed race, so there was a lot in there, but they kept the talking heads off camera. So you heard their voices, you got their opinions, but you didn't kind of,
There's a difference when you're watching them say it when it's just something that's said.
So I like the way it was made, and she made the film, she directed it, the daughter.
Who's your Mount Rushmore of music?
Mount Rushmore? What do you mean? Go on.
That means the four. I guess.
Okay.
The four heads. The four. It could be individual or bands. The four best or your four favorite.
Okay. The Jam and Paul Weller in general, I guess partly because he's stayed true. I think his ideals and his combination of kind of voice and style is, you know, it's changed, it's evolved, but I think he's always kept true to himself, you know. So I think the Jam particularly would need to be there. If I had to pick a person, it would be Paul Weller. But
yeah, it could be four bands or artists.
Yeah. I can't really not say the Ramones because they were just like a big part. There are certain records that I come back to, like the Dusty in Memphis, Dusty Springfield album, but I probably wouldn't put Dusty up there as an icon. Maybe Debbie Harry, maybe Kate Bush. Yeah, forward. That's tricky.
Who haven't you seen?
New Order would have to be up there. Yeah, I'd have to put New Order up there over Joy Division, actually. Yeah, but then I'd want the Jesus and Mary chain in there as well.
who haven't you seen? Who's on your bucket list? Who haven't you seen that you?
Who haven't I seen? I missed a few things. I missed the Jam. I had a Jam ticket in '82 for what turned out to be their last tour, but it was my last year at school, and I was a bit skin, and somebody offered to buy it from me, and I probably went and spent it on records anyway. So that was a foolish moment. I never saw the Smiths, even though they played here in Oxford. That would have been so easy, you know. So that was something I missed. I mean, I wouldn't put either of them. I wouldn't go and see them now if they reformed, though. You know that.
Who is now that you would love to see the next time you're within?
Next time that's possible.
Possible and within distance too.
I guess I'd like to go and see the Streets. I've never seen the Streets, and I've loved all the records. Not all the records, but most of the records. And I love the new record, the most recent one. So, and he's just also put out a track called 21st of June, which is supposedly the day that all lockdown restrictions will be over here. Not that anyone believes it, you know, but it's so funny. The problem with going to see the Streets, though, I think the audience would annoy me. I think there'd be too many lads in the audience. I think it would be a bit too blokey, and so I'd probably get annoyed. So it would have to be my own personal show, I think.
Yeah,
so,
or a small venue or a festival where you could stay.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I guess I'd like to go and see the other record I really got into last year was Prince Fatty and Shanice McManaman. It's proper old school kind of reggae, but done by this white bloke in Brighton, you know, who's a producer really, but he just sort of nails it. So I'd like to go to that show. There was a brilliant series on BBC late last year called Small Axe, and it was Steve McQueen made a series of films, and based on Black Britain from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and they had one episode which was all based around Janet Kay's Silly Games track, which was a big hit here in 1979, and it just sort of really evoked something about that music and the context and stuff, and I kind of like to be in the middle of that moment.
I got to go back and listen to this. There's a lot of artists that I don't know about, and I got to start listening to. You know, it's such there's stuff that's global, and there's stuff that just doesn't come here. And
I know. Yeah,
I listen to a lot. It's probably the same over there. We'll get you out of here on this. We asked this of all of our guests. I could talk music all day, so anytime we're happy to jump on a call or we'll do it again. But we ask our guests if you could have one person that you can spend 24 hours with. They have to be alive, and you can't be related to them. And I'm going to make it happen for one of my guests. Who would it be? It doesn't have to be music. It could be anyone. You just can't be related to them, and they have to be alive. Who would it be, and what would you like to do?
Yeah. Okay. I think I'd like to go out drinking with Robert De Niro.
There you go. Robert De Niro. It's our first was it our first actor? Someone might have said Denzel Washington.
Okay, yeah.
Denzel, but Robert De Niro, that's a great pick. He's on the list. We're going to try and make it happen. Dave Newton, thanks for joining us today. It's always
that was lovely. Yeah.
Chat music. I look forward to joining your networking stuff. And
see you in a couple of weeks, I guess, for the next one.
It's good to get an outside opinion of, I know we got a lot of music fans who I'm connected with, and hopefully they can, listen to some of the people you talked about and broaden the horizons. We're always looking to broaden our music horizons. I see in your background, you got a ton of stuff already, but you could always use some more. I love the.
There's always space for a few more posters somewhere.
I love the setup there, and I appreciate you taking the time today. And we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, you take care, Matt.
All right, thanks, Dave.